We have known from the inception of the land bank that there would be properties worth salvaging, properties we would renovate and return families to. Under Dennis Roberts, who is here, we have created 3 unique programs. The first is a large developer program targeted to larger, well-established rehabbers with for-sale marketing arms who have the ability to renovate 5 to 10 properties simultaneously. The second program is something called the small rehab program. It's targeted to small rehabbers who will sell their property to an owner-occupier. And the third program is designed for the owner-occupier, the individual who wants to buy a land bank property directly and limit it him or herself. The land bank is also doing something very exciting. It's exploring something called the deconstruction market. Deconstruction is the demolition of a house board by board so as to save and reutilize materials within the house. The City of Cleveland, NPI, Chris Caius, many of you know Chris, have gotten the cost of deconstructing a home through trial and error down to about $14,000 per home, which is about $6,000 more than the normal demolition. The land bank is searching for ways to close that gap so as to make deconstruction sustainable economically by creating markets for the recycled materials. With the help of the Cleveland Foundation, they've issued a request for qualifications and selected a national expert, a man named Dave Burke of a company called Reuse Consulting, to help us identify local and national markets for salvaged material and develop a plan that helps us get that material to those markets and to help us reduce deconstruction costs up front. This plan will be completed by the end of June. It's a significant undertaking because up to this point, the main focus of deconstruction efforts have been how to deconstruct. Through the land banks, the how will be matched up with real-time markets that can use the deconstructed materials and make deconstruction a profitable enterprise in itself. And as we say in the office, this is cutting-edge stuff and very exciting. I've been to a place in Pittsburgh, the name now escapes me, where you can buy all kinds of recycled building materials. You can talk about flooring, you could talk about beams, you could talk about windows and doors and brass fixtures, and you name it, it's there. And who knows, perhaps as a result of the efforts here, we will create a center here in Cleveland. You can go and pick up used building materials that maybe bring down the cost of rehab for you, but also help to reutilize materials. The Land Banks is also working with Parkworks to identify sites that would be good strategic locations for rain gardens. Some call them wetlands. Rain gardens divert water from the county storm overflow system by utilizing green infrastructure as opposed to gray infrastructure, i.e. cement, asphalt, hard surfaces. We're talking about situations where the county would simply go in at the land bank and we would remove, perhaps on a 1 or a 2 acre site, all the infrastructure and create a rain garden or a wetland right there. The more wetlands or rain gardens that we create around the county, the less water that flows into the county's stormwater overflow system. And this is a program that's supported by, I see Paul is here, county planning has been a leader in this and making sure we connected with folks at the Regional Sewer Authority and EPA. And this is something we find very exciting. And we think because of the access to land and the willingness of the staff to undertake these kind of unusual projects that we're going to see some of these occurring within the next 12 months. Speaking of EPA, and it was mentioned by Jan, in just our 6th operational month, the Land Bank applied for and was awarded just this past Wednesday through the efforts of Cheryl Stevens. I got to make sure everybody in. I'm working my way around, Cheryl. But it was largely through the efforts of Cheryl, a $400,000 grant from the US EPA to clean up and remediate properties. What we are taking in the first of what we believe will be many such grants. Remember what the nature of the land bank is. The nature of the land bank is such that we'll be taking a lot of unwanted and abandoned properties. It's inevitable that many of these properties will be contaminated. The idea is that some projects that were stuck in the mud, as we say in that office, can now be reactivated with this kind of grant money. The result is a synergy of economic development and jobs on the one hand, and then cleaning up the environment in Cuyahoga County on the other. So it's something that we find very exciting, and again, I want to congratulate staff. Another significant accomplishment, and this is one that I think has gone unreported, but I think it may be the most important thing the office has done, is an agreement with one of the 2 mortgage giants in the country. It's a groundbreaking agreement with the largest holder of mortgages and REO properties in the country, good old Fannie Mae. After significant negotiations between Fannie Mae and Land Bank staff, they have agreed to stop selling low-value properties to speculators and flippers. Instead, distressed properties valued at $25,000 or less are transferred to the land bank for $1. But Fannie Mae also transfers over not only the title of the property, but $3,500 per property to the land bank for each such distressed property, because most of these properties are going to be torn down. The land bank was the first agency in the country to negotiate such a transaction, which Fannie Mae will now try to model in other cities. Due to the early success, Fannie Mae and land bank staff are now negotiating another first-in-the-nation program of acquiring Fannie Mae judgments. We're acquiring the judgments earlier in the foreclosure process, which will get nuisance properties off the market up to 6 months sooner than they otherwise would be. Now, that being the case, that time saved, that 6 months difference on obtaining one of these properties in a distressed state, in a distressed community, can mean the difference between a house being rehabilitated versus a house having to be torn down. And I think I can tell you that Fannie Mae has been a great partner to work with. We have struggled with, I think, the other GSE. We've been struggling with HUD. What's new? Everybody struggles with HUD. And I know that Gus has worked hard with some of the other mortgage giants as we attempt to craft agreements with them. You need to know that this predatory lending, this taking advantage of Northeast Ohio, Cuyahoga County, Cleveland, came in waves. Initially, it was the mortgages that could not be sustained, properties that were foreclosed, but then there was the next wave of predators. You know, many of these properties, thousands have been foreclosed. They've already been transferred. They've been transferred to bulk buyers. And you've heard talk about companies like Go Invest Wisely and a variety of other folks from all over the country who've been buying. The name of the company was called Go Invest Wisely. If you saw what they had purchased, you'd realize they should have added the word, as my kids would say, not, after Go Invest Wisely. So what they've done is they've moved these properties, and all they've done is move these low-value properties to these folks who are speculating on them, so we've created the next wave of speculators, the next wave of predators, which is why the agreement is so important. It's important that the land bank break this cycle. Another fine example, I think I've got a couple more left, of regional cooperation is evidenced by the joint application to the Department of Housing and Urban Development for Round 2 of the Neighborhood Stabilization Program funding. Even though the land bank had been in business for just a few months, the land bank was the lead applicant. I've got 5 minutes, Steve? I never get the timing right. This is my 5th or 6th time. I'm going to make sure I get it done. The land bank, been in business just a few months. We were the lead applicant of the consortium to HUD on behalf of not only the land bank, but the City of Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, and CMHA. And through the fine work of the collective efforts of these staffs, the consortium was awarded $41 million to acquire properties, renovate them, and where necessary, engage in demolition. The land bank's portion of this award was $9 million, but because of the collaborative effort of these groups that were involved, who got what amount was not relevant because we're all working on the same collective goals. This, by the way, was the largest award in the country on a per capita basis. The land bank has also wowed community development partners in the state by its transactional capabilities that has helped cities extricate and clean titles and properties that heretofore have been viewed nuisances because we couldn't get a clean title. When Gus and others wrote this bill, they gave the land bank some authority to go in and take titles and clean them. And you know, if you're a developer, if you're trying to get a clean title, nothing is more frustrating than a title you can't clean. Today, the Land Bank Board passed resolutions authorizing a revolving loan fund to the nationally recognized Cleveland Housing Network, which will provide first mortgage financing to lease purchase homeowners who have purchased homes and have met the program requirements for home ownerships. This will result in at least 175 homeowners realizing the American dream of home ownership, but in the old-fashioned way, responsibly, by playing by the rules. One thing that many may not realize is that things that the land bank does touches upon many elected offices: the auditor, the treasurer, the prosecutor, the clerk, the courts, the sheriff. The land bank has singularly earned the reputation and confidence of these agencies in drafting policies and protocols that facilitate the new statutes and the ability to receive and hold properties to redevelopment. And to the credit of these agencies and the hard work of their staffs, together they have made this the most collaborative effort I've ever seen in county government. The list can go on, but the point is the infrastructure has been laid, which will finally allow us to deal with the fallout of the foreclosure crisis in ways that will not be gimmicky.